The very first thing I did after reincarnating as a bull was scarf down 200 pounds of dry hay. I ate my way to becoming the buffest bull in the pen. All the other cattle around me thought I'd completely lost my mind. Little did they know, growing bigger and meatier doesn't just make you an easy target for the butcher block. It also makes you way more likely to get shipped off to plow fields as hard labor. That is honestly worse than dying. But what they didn't know was that I had awakened the devour and evolve system. As long as I keep eating, I can keep getting stronger. Sure, munching on plain hay levels me up pretty slowly. But hey, at least it's super safe. I figured I could smoothly hit the 3,000-pound mark and trigger my evolution. But I never expected 2 humans to show up out of nowhere and completely wreck my plans. Daddy, please don't butcher Blackie. He's such a good boy. A little girl tugged at a burly man's arm, begging him over and over, her tear-reddened eyes glancing over in my direction. But the burly guy's face didn't budge an inch. Duo, isn't braised beef delicious? Well yeah, it's delicious. But, before the little girl could finish her sentence, the big guy patted her head and said, "Don't worry, we won't butcher him. The meat market already placed the order. We're just selling him right before New Year's." Hearing their conversation, the hay in my mouth instantly lost all its flavor. Luckily, New Year's was still a while away. As long as I could pull off an evolution before then, I'd definitely find a way to break out of this cattle farm. Over those 2 months, I sped up my eating like a madman. Whether it was dry corn stalks or crude soybean meal, I crammed every last bit of it right into my mouth. But the results weren't looking great. Ding. Species, domestic cattle. Current weight, 800 pounds. Constitution, 15. Strength, 20. Since I was constantly shoveling down low-energy food, my stats barely went up at all. Even though I was already an absolute behemoth compared to the other regular cattle, I still didn't stand a chance if I had to fight against humans. Right as I was thinking that, the burly man showed up in front of me again, bringing a few other guys along. Seeing how much bulkier I'd gotten, his eyes lit up with absolute delight. "Give me a hand, boys. Once we get my big black bull loaded onto the truck, I'll treat you all to a massive feast." Even though I thrashed and resisted with all my might, I still got dragged out of the farm by my horns, staring at the massive transport truck equipped with an iron cage right in front of me. My heart sank straight to the bottom of my chest. If it were just an ordinary pickup truck, I could still try rolling it over to make a run for it. But a heavy-duty truck with reinforced iron bars? That completely shattered any hope I had left. However, right as they loaded me into the back, I noticed they actually didn't use a padlock on the cage door. They only secured it with a sliding bolt latch. This was definitely my absolute last chance to escape. The engine roared to life. The truck started bouncing and jolting violently. I locked my eyes dead on that latch. As long as I could ram it open, I was going to survive. But the burly guy was sitting right in the cab, constantly checking on me through the rearview mirror. I didn't dare make any reckless moves. The truck turned onto a winding mountain road, shaking even harder than before, seizing the moment while the driver was focused on navigating the curves. I quietly pressed my horns against the latch, nudging it out bit by bit. But right when the bolt was about to slide completely free, the driver slammed hard on the brakes. "Dow, you blind bastard, watch where you're driving." Through the gaps of my iron cage, I saw a van blocking the middle of the road. 3 scrawny men stepped out of the vehicle. The guy in the lead had a cigarette dangling from his lips and a wicked scar across his face. "Boss Lee, long time no see, huh?" The scar-faced man walked up to the driver's cab, flashing a sinister smile. The burly man's face instantly dropped. "Lao Dao, what do you want?" "Oh, nothing much. Just heard you're keeping a prime piece of beef back here, thought I'd take a look," Lao Dao said, strolling toward the back of the truck. I immediately played dumb, lying quietly in my cage. "Damn, you raised this one well. Gotta weigh at least 800 pounds, huh?" Lao Dao slapped the iron cage, his eyes gleaming with sheer greed. The burly man scrambled out of the truck. "Lao Dao, I've already sold this bull to the meat market. Don't you get any funny ideas?" "The meat market? Man, what a waste." Lao Dao crushed out his cigarette, leaned into the big guy's ear, and whispered something. The burly man's face turned grim. Finally, he gritted his teeth. "Deal, but it's gonna cost you extra." My heart sank. These 2 humans were actually cutting a dirty deal right in front of me. But right at that moment, Lao Dao suddenly pointed at the latch. "Boss Lee, why the hell isn't your cage locked?" The big guy froze. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, I threw every ounce of my strength into a vicious tackle straight at the latch. Crack. The metal latch snapped right off. The cage door flew wide open, and I charged out. I leapt straight off the truck. Damn it, the bull's making a run for it. Lao Dao roared from behind me. But I was already diving into the woods by the road. I ran like a madman deeper into the trees. The 2 men were screaming and cursing behind me. "Hurry up and catch it. That beast is worth $30,000 to me." Lao Dao's voice was closing in. My 4 legs were flying. The branches whipped against my body, leaving a burning sting. But it didn't take long before I felt my stamina draining. Damn it, eating nothing but grass for 2 months didn't give me nearly enough energy. Just when my legs were about to give out, a heavy stench of blood drifted from up ahead. I followed the scent, and to my shock, I found a dead wild boar lying in the bushes. It looked like a fresh kill. Panting heavily, I stared at the carcass, my mind racing a mile a minute. The system told me eating would make me stronger, but it never said I was strictly a vegetarian. The footsteps behind me were getting louder. I didn't have time to second guess. Screw it, desperate times call for desperate measures. I lowered my head. I sank my teeth into the boar's flesh, viciously ripping off a huge chunk and shoving it into my mouth. The metallic taste of blood instantly flooded my mouth. Fighting back a wave of nausea, I choked it down. But the very next second, the system's alerts went absolutely crazy. Ding! Consumed wild boar flesh. Vitality increased by 5 points. Strength increased by 8 points. Weight increased by 100 pounds. I froze in shock. One bite of meat did more for me than a whole month of chewing grass. But I had no time to marvel at it. I savagely tore into the boar, inhaling huge mouthfuls of meat like a starving beast. With every gulp, a scorching, explosive power surged through my veins. My muscles were expanding at a terrifying rate. Over there, old Dao's voice boomed right behind me. I spun my head around fast, only to see 3 guys charging at me with hunting rifles leveled. A burly man trailed behind them, his face livid with rage. Old Dao. Worth money my ass. If this beast gets away, I'll have to cough up 30,000 yuan. Old Dao raised his rifle, aiming the pitch-black muzzle straight at me. My heart tightened in my chest. I immediately clamped down on the remaining half of the boar carcass, whipped around, and bolted. Bang! A gunshot rang out, the bullet grazing right past my hind leg, blasting a shower of dirt across the ground. I ran even faster, biting down on that dead boar with a death grip. This was my lifeline, my only ticket to survival. I couldn't drop it no matter what. After sprinting for over a dozen minutes, I finally shook off old Dao and his crew, ducking into a mountain cave to hide. I dropped the boar, panting heavily, gasping for air. Then, the system chime rang out once more. Ding. Current weight, 900 jin. Constitution, 32. Strength, 45. Detected continuous ingestion of high-energy flesh by host. Body initiating mutation response. Mutation? I looked down at my own body, astonished to find a faint layer of dark, hardened armor forming across my skin. On top of that, my 4 legs were visibly thicker and much more rugged than before. With every muscle fiber bulging clearly, I tested my strength, pawing at the ground with a hoof, and effortlessly gouged a deep pit right into solid rock. My strength had more than doubled. Thrilled, I went right back to tearing into the boar carcass, quickly devouring the rest of it into my belly. Ding! Fully devoured wild boar. Weight surpassed 1,000 jin. Strength surpassed 50 points. Body mutation accelerating. Skin hardening level increased by 30%. I felt raw power surging through every fiber of my being. The weakness from just moments ago had vanished completely. But right at that instant, the vicious barking of hounds suddenly echoed from outside the cave. My heart sank. That bastard old Dao actually tracked me down with hunting dogs. Sure enough, moments later, 3 ferocious hounds burst into the cave, baring their sharp fangs and lunging right at me. The lead dog was absolutely massive, standing over a meter tall, its eyes glowing with murderous intent. Tear it to shreds. Old Dao's voice roared from outside the cave. All 3 hounds leapt at me simultaneously, their razor-sharp fangs aimed straight for my throat. But this time, I didn't run. I let out a low, rumbling growl, violently reared up on my front hooves, and slammed them down hard on the lead hound. Thud. With a sickening impact, the dog shrieked as it flew backward, smashing into the cave wall and dying instantly on impact. The other 2 hounds froze in their tracks, a flash of pure terror in their eyes. But seeing red, I charged straight in, plunging my horns deep through the second hound's belly. Terrified, the third dog turned to flee, only for me to stomp its spine clean in 2 with a single hoof. From outside, old Dao screamed in horror. Is that damn beast really a bull? Run. Staring down at the 3 dead hounds on the ground, a crazy idea suddenly flashed through my mind. If eating wild boar makes me stronger, what about eating hunting dogs? I lowered my head, sank my teeth into the biggest lead hound, and viciously ripped off a huge chunk of flesh, stuffing it into my mouth. Ding! Devoured mutated hound flesh. Gained 80 high energy points. Strength increased by 12 points. Constitution increased by 10 points. Agility increased by 5 points. My eyes lit up. The energy from these hounds was actually higher than a wild boar's. I sped up, frantically devouring the 3 hound carcasses. Devouring complete. Current weight, 1,200 jin. Strength, 78. Constitution, 65. Agility, 30. Detected that the host's constitution has reached the mutation threshold. The body is beginning a deep mutation. The moment the system spoke, the skin all over my body started burning up intensely. It felt like countless ants were gnawing at me. The pain was so agonizing I rolled on the ground. But I gritted my teeth and held back my screams. About 10 minutes later, the scorching pain finally subsided. I struggled to my feet and looked down at my body. As a bull, I was completely stunned. A layer of black, bony plating had actually grown across the surface of my skin. Just like wearing a suit of armor. And right along my spine, 7 or 8 razor-sharp bone spikes had sprouted out, each half a foot long. Gleaming with a cold light in the dim cave, I shook my head to test it out, and noticed my horns had grown a whole size thicker, their tips as sharp as twin blades. While I was still in shock, old Dao's voice suddenly rang out from outside the cave. "Boss Lee, are you sure that beast is inside? I saw him run in with my own 2 eyes. There's no way he got away." The burly man's voice was trembling, clearly terrified by what he'd witnessed earlier. "All right then, don't blame me for playing dirty. That damn monster slaughtered 3 of my hounds. He dies today." As soon as old Dao finished speaking, I heard a rustling sound. Like they were prepping something. I stared at the cave entrance on high alert. Every muscle in my body tensed up. But the very next second, an object sparking with fire was tossed inside. Dynamite. My pupils shrank in horror. I instantly turned and bolted deeper into the cave. Boom. A deafening explosion went off. The entire cavern shook violently as shattered rocks rained down from above. The blast wave slammed me to the ground, and several sharp boulders crashed into my back. Yet, I only felt a dull, minor ache. That layer of bony armor had actually shielded me from the brunt of the impact. I struggled back to my feet, only to see the entrance half buried in rubble. "Did we blow it to pieces?" Old Dao's voice called out from outside. "It should be dead. With a blast that huge, even a full-grown bear would be blown to shreds." The burly man let out a sigh of relief. Listening to their conversation, a vicious glint flashed across my eyes. "You think you can blow me up? In your dreams." Letting out a savage growl, I charged straight at the half-collapsed entrance. The rubble and dirt couldn't hold me back at all. I forcefully smashed right through the wreckage and burst out of the cave. The blinding sunlight made me squint my eyes. As my vision cleared, I saw old Dao and the burly man standing there, their faces pale as ghosts from absolute terror. What the hell kind of monster is this? Old Dao stared at the spikes and armor covering my body, his hands trembling so violently he couldn't even hold his shotgun steady. The burly man collapsed right onto the dirt, wetting his pants on the spot. I shook the dust off my head and slowly stalked toward the 2 of them. Old Dao finally snapped out of his daze, raised his shotgun and opened fire right at me. All 3 bullets slammed right into my armor, but they just sparked off. They didn't even scratch my hide. Lao Dao completely lost it. He dropped his shotgun, turned around, and ran for his life. "Lao Dao, don't leave me behind." The big guy scrambled to his feet, trying to follow him. But his legs turned to jelly from the sheer terror. He tripped and fell flat on his face. I walked right up to the big guy, towering over him, just staring him down. This guy had fed me for 2 months. Sure, it was just to sell me off. But at least he never abused me. I stared at him for a few intense seconds. Finally, I turned away and bolted in the direction Lao Dao ran. That bastard tried to blow me up, and he thinks he can just run away. I pushed off with all 4 hooves, moving at terrifying speed. In just a few breaths, I caught up to him. He glanced back and saw me, and absolutely lost his mind with fear. He lost his footing, and tumbled straight down the steep hillside. I stood at the edge of the slope, watching him thrash and scream in a patch of thorns. I didn't bother chasing him down. Suddenly, the system alert rang out. "Ding! Host has completed first counter kill against human hunters. Achievement unlocked. Breaking the shackles. Body mutation is now stable. Official evolution complete. Ironclad Brute Bull. Unlocking new mission. Head deep into the wilderness. Devour stronger creatures. Reach a body weight of 2,000 jin." I looked up at the endless mountains in the distance. A thrill of pure excitement flashed in my eyes. There was no going back to the human world for me anymore. So, I'll just have to eat my way to survival out here in the wild. I turned away from the slope and marched straight into the deep woods without looking back. I could hear the big guy yelling behind me, but I couldn't care less anymore. The system chimed again. "Ding. Current status. Ironclad Brute Bull. Weight, 1,200 jin. Strength, 78. Constitution, 65. Agility, 30. Evolution threshold, 2,000 jin to unlock new form. Suggestion. Host should hunt higher energy prey." I flicked my tail and picked up the pace, heading deeper into the forest. If I wanted to get stronger, I needed to find way tougher prey. After walking for about an hour, the trees around me got incredibly thick. The sunlight could barely peek through. A damp, rotting stench hung heavy in the air, and the ground was littered with animal droppings and bone scraps. My ears instantly perked up. This place was clearly the territory of some massive predator. Right at that moment, the bushes ahead of me began to rustle violently. I stopped dead in my tracks, every single muscle in my body tensing up. A massive, hulking wild boar burst right out of the underbrush. Its tusks were at least a foot long, and its eyes were glowing blood red. This monster was a whole size bigger than the one I had eaten earlier. It had to weigh at least 400 or 500 jin. The moment it locked eyes with me, it let out a furious, deafening squeal, pawing at the dirt, ready to charge right at me. But I didn't back down. Instead, I charged right back at it. The two of us giant beasts slammed into each other with a heavy, bone-crushing thud. Its razor-sharp tusks stabbed into my armor, but they only left 2 shallow scratches behind. I seized the moment, dropped my head, and viciously drove my horns deep into its flesh. It let out a blood-curdling squeal, as fresh blood gushed everywhere. With one violent jerk of my head, I flipped the massive boar completely off its feet. It thrashed around in the dirt, desperately trying to scramble back up, only to have its neck snapped under my hoof. Ding! Large wild boar killed. Acquired 120 high energy points. I didn't hesitate and started devouring the boar's corpse. As the warm flesh and blood hit my tongue, that familiar burning sensation surged through my body once again. Ding! Weight increased by 150 pounds. Strength increased by 15 points. Constitution increased by 12 points. Current weight, 1,350 pounds. Still need 650 pounds until evolution. Just as I was happily chowing down, a rustling sound suddenly came from all around me. I snapped my head up, and realized I was already surrounded by 7 or 8 pairs of glowing green eyes. It was a wolf pack. The alpha wolf leading them was massive, covered in grayish-black fur. Its eyes were vicious, and drool hung from the corners of its mouth. The other wolves spread out, slowly closing in to surround me. I swallowed the meat in my mouth and let out a low growl. Taking a combat stance, the pack obviously saw me as an intruder, and one who had stolen their prey. The alpha let out a loud howl, and the other wolves immediately pounced from all directions. I spun around hard, kicking a wolf aiming for my hind legs flying with my back hoof. Another wolf clamped its jaws onto my neck, but its teeth completely shattered against my armor. It yelped and let go. I took the chance to gore it with my horns, slamming it fiercely into the ground. However, the pack's teamwork was incredibly seamless. Right after the alpha was pushed back, another one instantly took its place. My stamina was starting to drain, and my breathing was getting heavy. Right at that moment, the alpha suddenly lunged from the side. Its razor-sharp claws aimed straight for my eyes. I didn't have time to dodge. The alpha's claws slashed across my cheek, ripping a deep gash open. Blood instantly gushed out. I roared in pain, absolutely in rage. Screw the wolf pack. Today, it's either you die or I do. I unleashed a burst of explosive power, violently ramming the bone spikes on my back into the alpha. It reacted extremely fast, flipping in midair to dodge it, but a wolf right behind it wasn't so lucky. It was pierced right through the body by my bone spikes, dying on the spot. Seeing their packmate die such a gruesome death, a flash of fear crossed the other wolves' eyes. Their attacks clearly weakened. I seized the chance and charged at the nearest wolf, crushing its skull with a single stomp of my hoof. Seeing things going south, the alpha let out a long howl, quickly retreating with the rest of the pack. I stood there, panting heavily, completely covered in blood. I couldn't even tell if it was mine or the wolves'. Ding! 3 wild wolves killed. Acquired 180 high energy points. Host injury detected. Immediate consumption of flesh and blood is recommended to restore stamina. I looked at the 2 wolf corpses on the ground, and that half-eaten wild boar, and began to eat without hesitation. As the flesh hit my mouth, a tingling sensation came from my wounds. They were actually healing at a visible rate. Ding! Weight has surpassed 1,500 pounds. Strength has surpassed 100 points. Armor hardness upgraded. Bone spike length increased. I felt my body surging with power. The exhaustion from earlier was completely wiped away. But right at that moment, another wolf howl echoed in the distance, and their numbers had more than doubled. My heart sank. These bastards actually called for backup. I can't stay here. I need to find a safe spot, fast. I grabbed the remaining half of the wild boar in my mouth, and turned to sprint deep into the dense forest. The howling behind me was getting closer. This time, they were really out for my blood. I ran for my life with the boar's carcass in my jaws. The howling chased me like a shadow. Through the gaps in the trees, I could see at least a dozen wolves on my tail. Leading the pack was the exact same wolf from before. That bastard really holds a grudge. I galloped as fast as my 4 hooves could take me, with branches constantly scraping against my body. My armor ground together, making a harsh, scraping sound. But the wolf pack was faster. The gap between us was closing. Just as they were about to catch me, a clearing suddenly opened up ahead. I burst out of the woods, and found myself in a jagged, rocky wasteland. Massive boulders were scattered everywhere, with a small stream cutting right through the middle. I didn't have time to think. I just charged straight into the rocks. The pack was hot on my heels. Over a dozen wolves swarmed in from all sides, completely cutting off any chance of escape. The alpha wolf stood on a massive boulder, glaring down at me. Its eyes were filled with pure, murderous rage. It threw its head back and let out a long howl. Instantly, the pack attacked. They'd gotten smarter this time. No more attacking one by one. They were teaming up in small groups. 3 wolves lunged at my left side all at once. The second I turned to fight them off, 2 more wolves sank their teeth into my right hind leg. I kicked them away in agony, but a wolf from the front tackled me to the ground. Their razor-sharp claws frantically tore at my armor. As tough as it was, it couldn't handle so many of them at once. It started to crack. I thrashed around like a madman, shoving off one of the wolves, pinning me down. Taking advantage of their split-second retreat, I scrambled to my feet and charged straight at the nearest wolf. My horns pierced violently into its chest. With a brutal toss of my head, I smashed it right against the rocks. But before I could even catch my breath, the alpha wolf leapt from its boulder, lunging straight for my throat. I dodged to the side, but its claws tore 3 bloody gashes across my face. I let out a furious roar. I spun around and kicked the alpha as hard as I could with my hind legs. The alpha flipped in midair and landed on its feet. It was terrifyingly agile. The rest of the pack used the chance to close in again. My stamina was draining fast. Just then, the alpha clamped its jaws down on my front leg. Another wolf leapt right at my eyes. I thrashed my head wildly, and my horns ripped straight through its belly. Its guts spilled all over the ground, but the alpha wouldn't let go of my leg. Its fangs punctured right through my armor, digging deep into my flesh. The pain drove me absolutely insane. I yanked my front leg high into the air and slammed it into the ground with everything I had. The alpha's skull cracked against the stone, and it finally let go. Target killed. 60 high energy points awarded. Critical injury detected. Immediate energy replenishment advised. I stood there gasping for air, staring at the 3 dead wolves on the ground. Without a second thought, I lowered my head and tore into them. The warm flesh filled my mouth. A stinging itch flared up from my wounds again. The pack watched in shock as I ate their companion right in front of them. Fear and fury flashed in their eyes. The alpha wolf let out another long howl. The rest of the pack lunged at me in a frenzy. This time, they were truly fighting for their lives. Completely ignoring their own safety, 7 or 8 wolves tackled me to the ground all at once. Razor-sharp claws and fangs tore at me wildly. My armor finally couldn't take it anymore, and it started shattering all over. Blood poured out from the cracks. I felt my consciousness fading. My body was getting heavier and heavier. Was I really going to die here? But just then, the system notification suddenly rang out. Ding! Host's vitals are in critical condition. Initiating emergency evolution mode, forcibly burning all energy within the body. Activating berserk state. The very next second, the blood in my entire body felt like it was boiling. An unprecedented surge of power erupted from deep inside me. I let out an earth-shattering roar. I violently surged to my feet, sending all the wolves pinning me down flying into the air. My eyes turned blood red. The bone spikes on my spine started growing like crazy, extending from half a foot to over a foot long. The cracks in my armor started healing, becoming even thicker and gleaming with a heavy, metallic shine. I charged at the nearest wolf, and my hoof completely crushed its skull. Another wolf lunged at me, but I caught it with my horns and slammed it brutally against the rocks. It died instantly. I was like a blood-crazed monster. Wherever I went, wolves dropped dead one after another. But a second later, the alpha wolf threw its head back and howled. The sound was piercing and shrill. Right after, its body started swelling. The muscles underneath its fur bulged out wildly. Its eyes turned an even deeper blood red, and its fangs doubled in size. Its entire body grew massively in size. That bastard could go berserk too. The enraged alpha was even faster now. Before I could even react, it was already right in front of me. Its razor-sharp claws swiped straight for my throat. I desperately jerked my head away, but its claws tore 3 bloody gashes into my neck. Staggering back in pain, the alpha didn't give me a single moment to breathe. It lunged again. This time, it clamped its jaws right onto my front leg. Its fangs pierced right through my armor, sinking deep into my flesh. I thrashed my leg around frantically, but I couldn't shake the beast off. The alpha locked its jaw in a death grip, violently tearing and ripping at me, trying to completely snap my leg off. The agonizing pain made me stumble. I could literally feel my bones cracking under the pressure. No, I have to break free. I jerked up my other front hoof and ruthlessly smashed it into the alpha's head. 1, 2, 3 times. The alpha finally let go, stumbling backward a few steps. I seized the chance and dipped my head, aiming the remaining bone spikes on my back, and thrust them viciously into the alpha. It tried to dodge, but because of those heavy blows just now, it was half a beat too slow. The bone spike stabbed right through its shoulder. I pushed forward with every ounce of strength I had left. Snap! The alpha's shoulder blade was completely pierced through. It let out a miserable, agonizing shriek, struggling desperately to break free. But I pinned it down hard, forcing it step by step toward the edge of the canyon. The Wolf King's hind legs were already dangling in the air. If I just pushed a little harder, it would fall over the edge. But right at that moment, the Wolf King suddenly snapped its jaws shut around my neck. It wanted to drag me down to hell with it. Its fangs pierced right through my armor, digging deep into my veins. Warm blood gushed out. I could feel my consciousness starting to fade. My body was getting heavier and heavier. No, I can't die here. I gritted my teeth and pushed with everything I had. I violently bucked my horns, throwing the Wolf King off me. It went flying, sailing through the air in a huge arc, before crashing heavily into the jagged rocks at the bottom of the canyon. I stumbled backwards a few steps, narrowly avoiding going over the edge myself. Panting heavily, I collapsed onto the ground. The wound on my neck was still bleeding uncontrollably. Then, the system chime rang out. Ding! Slain Mutant Wolf King. Gained 500 high energy points. Skills acquired: Bloodthirsty, Berserk, and Extreme Speed. Weight has broken past 2,000 pounds. Strength has surpassed 150 points. Agility has surpassed 80 points. The body is initiating a deep evolution. Host, please replenish your energy immediately. I struggled to my feet, limping my way to the edge of the canyon. The Wolf King's corpse was lying right down there. It was a mangled, bloody mess from the fall, but it was still edible. I carefully made my way down the canyon, approaching the Wolf King's carcass. Even in death, this bastard was massive. It had to weigh at least 600 or 700 pounds. I didn't hesitate and started devouring it. The warm flesh entered my mouth, and that familiar burning sensation surged through my body once again. The wound on my neck started to heal. My broken bone spikes were even growing back. I gorged myself like a madman, and quickly devoured more than half of the Wolf King's carcass. Ding! Devour complete. Current weight, 2,200 pounds. Strength, 180. Physique, 150. Agility, 90. Armor has evolved into heavy armor. Defense increased by 200%. Bone spikes have evolved into bladed bone spikes. Armor penetration increased by 300%. I felt raw power coursing through my entire body. The weakness from just a moment ago vanished completely. I lifted my head, and realized that over a dozen wolves were standing at the top of the canyon. They stared down at me, their eyes filled with absolute awe and terror. I let out a deep, menacing growl. The wolf pack instantly dropped to the ground, trembling in fear. From this day forward, this entire forest is my territory. After finishing off the Wolf King, I led the submissive pack back into the depths of the forest. Over the next few days, I went on a hunting rampage, slaughtering the beasts around me. My weight stabilized at 2,200 pounds. Every animal in the forest could sense my aura, and scattered out of my way. I thought I'd be able to peacefully continue my evolution, but I never expected the humans to come knocking again. One day, while I was drinking by the stream, I suddenly heard the roaring sound of helicopters in the distance. I snapped my head up on high alert. I saw 3 helicopters flying straight towards my position. I instantly spun around and bolted for the dense woods. But the helicopters were just too fast, and they quickly caught up to me. A massive metal net dropped from the sky. I didn't even have time to dodge. I was trapped right inside it. The metal net was electrified. A powerful shock of electricity instantly surged through my entire body. I convulsed in absolute agony. All 4 of my legs gave out, and I slammed heavily into the dirt. The helicopter touched down, and 7 or 8 heavily armed men jumped out. Leading the pack was a hulking bald guy, with a stun baton and a tranquilizer gun hanging from his belt. You could tell they were pros. "Captain, is this the mutant cow old Dao was talking about?" A young recruit walked over, his eyes wide with shock. The bald captain nodded, pulled out his walkie-talkie, and said, "Dr. Su, the target is secured. Awaiting orders." An excited woman's voice crackled through the radio. "Excellent. Transport him back to the lab immediately. I want to study his mutated genes myself." My heart sank when I heard that. A lab? These guys must specialize in hunting down mutant creatures. The bald captain waved his hand. Several of his men instantly drew their tranquilizer guns and unloaded a barrage of darts right at me. The darts pierced my skin, and the powerful drugs quickly made my vision blur. I thrashed around as hard as I could, but there was no breaking through that metal net. My body grew heavier and heavier. But just as I was about to pass out, the system prompt suddenly chimed in. Ding! Detected that the host has been injected with a massive dose of tranquilizers. Forced metabolism initiated. Estimated time to full recovery is 3 hours. It is advised that the host feign unconsciousness and wait for an opportunity to escape. I instantly stopped struggling, closed my eyes, and played dead. The bald captain walked over and poked me with his stun baton. Once he was sure I was completely out cold, he let out a sigh of relief. Get him in the transport cage. Move it, people. The squad worked together to heave me into a massive titanium alloy cage. Then, they hooked it up to a cable beneath the chopper. The helicopter took off. Peeking through my half-closed eyes, I watched the forest fade away into the distance. We flew for about an hour before the helicopter finally landed. I was hauled into a colossal underground base, completely surrounded by researchers in white lab coats. A woman in her 30s walked over. It was the same Dr. Sue from the radio earlier. She wore gold-rimmed glasses, and her eyes were gleaming with an insane obsession. Absolutely perfect. This is the most pristine mutant specimen I have ever seen. Dr. Sue circled the cage, frantically jotting down notes on her clipboard. Captain, move him to Lab 3. Prepare for gene sampling. The bald captain nodded and ordered his men to push the cage into an even larger room. It was packed with all sorts of high-tech equipment, with a massive metal operating table sitting right in the middle. My heart started pounding. These maniacs were going to dissect me. Dr. Sue walked up to the cage and pulled out a syringe filled with a glowing green liquid. Administer the gene stabilizer first, to keep him from going berserk during the procedure, she said, reaching out to open the cage door. But right at that moment, my eyes snapped open. The system had already metabolized almost all of the tranquilizer out of my body. I could finally move. I let out a furious roar and slammed myself against the cage door. As tough as that titanium alloy was, it was no match for my 2,200 pounds of sheer mass and 180 points of strength. With a deafening crunch, the door completely buckled under the impact. Dr. Sue stumbled back in terror and screamed, "He's awake. Quick, tase him." The bald captain reacted in a flash. He charged at me with his stun baton raised high, but I was already out of the cage. One powerful kick from my hooves sent him flying. He smashed into the wall and instantly blacked out. The rest of the squad whipped out their tranquilizer guns and unleashed a barrage of shots right at me. But the tranquilizer darts hit my heavy armor and just bounced right off. I charged at the nearest guard and sent him flying with my horns. The whole lab descended into absolute chaos as the researchers scattered in terror. Dr. Sue cowered behind a machine, trembling as he smashed the red button on the wall. A piercing alarm blared, and the laboratory doors slammed shut on their own. Right after that, over a dozen high-voltage electric nets dropped from the ceiling. The moment the nets powered up, a massive surge of electricity coursed through my entire body all over again. I was convulsing in pure agony, but I gritted my teeth and refused to go down. Watching this, a gleam of absolute madness flashed in Dr. Su's eyes. Brilliant. Its electrical resistance is even stronger than we predicted. A specimen like this is absolutely priceless. He muttered this as he walked over to a cabinet and pulled out several syringes filled with a glowing blue liquid. Since the standard tranquilizers aren't working, let's try this. A highly concentrated genetic enhancement serum. It's enough to knock any living creature out cold. He raised the syringe and started creeping toward me, step by step. I struggled with everything I had, but the electric nets had me completely pinned. I couldn't move an inch. Just as the needle was about to pierce my skin, I viciously triggered my bloodlust frenzy. The very second the bloodlust kicked in, the blood in my veins literally started boiling, and my eyes turned a dead, bloody red. My muscles bulged insanely, and my strength skyrocketed to 300 points. I let out an earth-shattering roar and violently snapped the high-voltage nets to pieces. The second the cables snapped, showers of sparks exploded everywhere. The lights across the entire lab violently flickered, and Dr. Sue jumped so hard his hand jerked. The syringe hit the floor, spilling that blue liquid everywhere. I charged at the nearest machine and ruthlessly smashed it to pieces with my horns. Those priceless, state-of-the-art machines were literally like wet paper to me. They were instantly reduced to scrap metal. Stop him, now. We can't let him destroy the equipment. Dr. Sue shrieked, but the remaining guards were too terrified to even get close. I went on an absolute rampage, destroying everything in sight. Cabinets, machines, operating tables, I completely pulverized them all. Just then, I spotted a massive freezer sitting in the corner. It was packed full of all kinds of glowing serums. I charged right at it. I smashed the glass door with a single headbutt, and dozens of vials spilled out onto the floor. There were red ones, blue ones, green ones, and even purple ones. When Dr. Sue saw that, his face instantly went dead pale. No, those are highly concentrated genetic serums. He absolutely cannot swallow those. But it was too late. I lowered my head, snatched up a purple vial, and just crunched right through the glass. I swallowed it down in one gulp. The second the liquid hit my tongue, an intense, burning heat rushed straight from my throat to my brain. Ding. Consumed highly concentrated genetic enhancement serum. Gained 800 high energy points. Constitution skyrocketed by 50 points. I felt pure power surging through my entire body. This serum was even stronger than eating 10 alpha wolves. Without a second thought, I just kept devouring the other serums, the red, the blue, the green. I shoved them all into my mouth. Dr. Su completely broke down. He fell to his knees, his eyes filled with absolute, utter despair. It is completely ruined. Those serums were worth hundreds of millions. The institute is going to go bankrupt. But I did not care about that at all. I just kept frantically devouring everything. Ding. Devour complete. Current weight, 2,500 pounds. Strength, 280. Constitution, 220. Agility, 150. Warning, energy overload detected in host body. Entering dormant state for metamorphosis. The moment the voice faded, my eyelids felt heavier and heavier and my body started slipping out of control. Wait, there is something wrong with these serums. I stumbled, trying to rush out of the lab. But my legs turned to jelly, completely drained of strength. With a loud crash, I slammed hard into the ground. My consciousness began to fade. Seeing this, hope reignited in Dr. Su's eyes. While it is unconscious, hit it with the tranquilizers, now. Pin it down. The bald captain scrambled up from the floor, clutching his chest as he walked over. Several squad members aimed their tranquilizer guns right at me, and unleashed a massive volley of shots. But when the darts hit my body, they could not even pierce my skin. Fueled by the serums, my heavy armor had grown even tougher, gleaming with a cold, metallic shine. The bald captain gritted his teeth, pulled out his walkie-talkie, and barked. Bring the transport truck around. While it is still knocked out, we need to move it, fast. About 10 minutes later, a massive transport truck rolled into the lab. Inside the back was a custom-built titanium alloy cage, lined with high-voltage electrodes. The squad worked together to hoist me into the cage, and shackled my 4 legs with specialized locks. Dr. Su walked over, reaching out to stroke my heavy armor, his eyes practically burning with obsession. It is absolutely perfect. The durability of this armor surpasses any known metal. If we can crack its genetic code, human technology will take a massive leap forward. He spun around and told the bald captain, transported down to the special lab on sub-level 3. They have the most advanced dissection equipment there. I am going to study it myself. The transport truck rumbled to life, and I was hauled deeper underground. The surroundings grew darker and darker, and the air reeked of harsh disinfectants. I could feel violent changes tearing through my body. My bones were restructuring, my muscles were expanding, my armor was evolving. The system notifications kept ringing in my head. Ding. Metamorphosis progress, 10%, 30%, 50%. Estimated time until ultimate metamorphosis is complete, 3 hours. Evolving into the abyssal demon bull. Upon completion of the metamorphosis, the host will gain apocalyptic level strength. Immediate escape is advised. The transport truck jerked to a halt. I was pushed into a colossal laboratory. This place was more than 10 times the size of the last one, packed with all kinds of terrifying equipment. In the center sat a massive metal operating table, covered in razor-sharp surgical tools and chainsaws. Dr. Su strolled in, trailed by over a dozen researchers. He stared down at me lying in the cage, a twisted, excited grin spreading across his face. Prep for dissection. I want to see exactly what its internal structure looks like, and what makes it so damn special. The researchers started prepping their gear. Chainsaws, scalpels, sampling tools, all laid out on the operating table. The bald captain walked over, looking a little uneasy as he spoke. Dr. Su, that beast was insanely ferocious just a minute ago. What the hell do we do if it wakes up? Dr. Su laughed dismissively. Relax. The dosage in his system is more than enough to keep him out cold for 3 days and 3 nights. Besides, this cage is forged from the absolute toughest titanium alloy. Not even a tank could smash through it. He said this while walking over to the cage, tapping the iron bars with his hand. And even if he did wake up, we're on the 3rd basement level, surrounded by 30 fully armed security guards. He wouldn't be able to escape even if he grew wings. But what he didn't know was that my consciousness had been completely awake this whole time. The system was helping me accelerate my metamorphosis. Just 2 more hours of holding on, and my evolution would be complete. When that time came, a mere titanium cage wouldn't be able to hold me at all. I lay there in the cage with my eyes closed, pretending to be unconscious. The system's notification chimed continuously in my mind. Ding. Metamorphosis progress, 70%, 80%. I could feel it. Every single bone in my body was restructuring, my muscle density increasing at an insane rate. Dr. Su walked up to the cage, pulling out a tablet to scan me. Strange. His body temperature is steadily rising, and his heart rate is speeding up. This doesn't look like a coma at all. He frowned, turning to the bald captain. Hit him with another dose of anesthetics. Just to be safe, the bald captain nodded, picking up a massive syringe and walking over. But right as he was about to open the cage, the system notification suddenly rang out. Ding, metamorphosis progress, 100%. Evolution complete. Abyssal demon bull. Weight, 3,300 pounds. Strength, 400. Constitution, 350. Agility, 200. Ding, new skills unlocked. Devastating charge, hellish trample, and roar of fear. I snapped my eyes open, a crimson light flashing in my pupils. The bald captain was so startled his hand jerked. Dropping the syringe to the floor, I let out a furious roar, the sound waves ripping outward like a physical force. The entire lab started violently shaking. Ding, roar of fear activated. All creatures within range are now afflicted with terror. Dr. Su and the researchers all slumped to the ground, their eyes filled with absolute dread. Even though the bald captain was a professional guard, he was so terrified his face went deathly pale. His legs turning to jelly. I suddenly stood up. The specialized restraints snapped instantly, like they were made of cheap paper. I slammed forward with all my might, and the titanium cage let out an ear-piercing shriek of twisting metal. Crack, crunch, the iron bars began to warp, fracturing with crack after crack. When Dr. Su saw this, he completely lost his mind. Impossible, that's titanium alloy, how could it possibly be smashed open? But reality slapped him hard in the face. I surged with power once more, and the cage completely blew apart, sending shrapnel flying everywhere. I stepped out from the wreckage, radiating a terrifying, oppressive aura. At this moment, my entire body was a full size larger than before. My heavy armor had turned a deep, pitch black, gleaming with a dark, sinister luster. The bone spikes on my back had morphed into razor-sharp blades, each one 2 feet long and unbelievably sharp. My horns had grown significantly thicker too, their tips glinting with a deadly, icy light, looking like they could pierce through absolutely anything. The bald captain forced himself onto his feet, trembling as he pulled out his walkie-talkie. All security personnel, report to the third-floor basement lab immediately. The target is on a rampage. I repeat, just as those words echoed out, the lab doors were smashed open, and 30 fully armed security personnel stormed in. They were wielding submachine guns and rocket launchers. Leading the pack was a scarred, middle-aged man. It was the captain of the security squad. The moment he laid eyes on me, a flash of sheer shock crossed his eyes, but he quickly regained his icy composure. All units, listen up. Fire at will. Take the target out at all costs. Bang, bang, bang. A dense hail of bullets rained down on me. They hammered against my heavy armor, but only managed to spark a shower of embers. My defense had multiplied immensely after my evolution. Ordinary bullets couldn't even scratch me. I charged straight toward the nearest cluster of guards, and unleashed my devastating charge. Ding, devastating charge activated. All obstacles in the collision path will be utterly obliterated. I was like a runaway tank, tearing through everything in my path. Several guards were sent flying into the air, slamming brutally against the wall and passing out cold on the spot. The scarred captain's face dropped. He immediately barked the order, use the rocket launchers. 2 guards hoisted rocket launchers onto their shoulders, locked onto me, and fired 2 rounds. The rockets came screaming toward me, trailing fiery exhaust, but I didn't even try to dodge. Boom, boom, 2 massive explosions went off, and the blinding fireball swallowed me whole. Watching this unfold, a glimmer of hope flashed in Dr. Su's eyes. Is it finally dead? But in the very next second, I walked right out of the flames, without a single scratch on my body. My heavy armor's defense was now strong enough to tank direct rocket hits. The scarred captain completely lost his nerve. He had never seen such a terrifying creature in his life. Fall back, retreat, but it was already too late. I unleashed Hell Stomp. I violently reared up on my front hooves, and slammed them viciously into the ground. With a deafening boom, the entire laboratory shook violently, as jagged cracks tore across the floor. A massive shockwave rippled outward, throwing over a dozen security guards completely off balance. As they tumbled to the ground, I seized the moment and charged right at them. I tossed one into the air with my horns, crushed another under my hooves, and skewered a third with my bone spikes. In just a few short minutes, more than half of the 30 guards were dead on the floor. The remaining survivors completely broke down. They dropped their weapons and ran for their lives. The scarred captain couldn't even care about his men anymore. He sprinted desperately toward the exit. But how could I ever let him escape? With one massive leap, I blocked the doorway. The scarred captain stared up at me, and shut his eyes in pure despair. I hoisted him up with my horns, and slammed him ruthlessly against the wall. He blacked out instantly. The only ones left standing in the entire laboratory were Dr. Su and a handful of researchers. They were all slumped on the floor, shivering uncontrollably in terror. I stalked toward Dr. Su step by step, my eyes burning with murderous intent. This was the woman who wanted to dissect me, the one who nearly took my life. Dr. Sue stared up at me, tears streaming endlessly down her face. Please, I beg you, let me go. I swear I'll never do it again. I just stared at her for a few agonizing seconds. Ultimately, I turned away and walked deeper into the lab. Killing her would be letting her off way too easy. Letting her live to watch her precious research institute get utterly destroyed. Now that was the ultimate punishment. I went on an absolute rampage, tearing the laboratory to shreds. I smashed all the equipment and machinery to pieces. Those precious experimental samples were trampled into mush beneath my hooves. Right then, I spotted a massive glass display cabinet in the corner. It was locking up all sorts of mutant creatures, mutated snakes, mutated rats, and even a mutated black bear. When they saw me, their eyes were filled with pure terror and desperation. I walked over, and shattered the glass with a single kick of my hoof. Those mutant creatures instantly scrambled out, fleeing in absolute panic, but that mutant black bear didn't run. Instead, it lowered its massive head, bowing in total submission to me. I stared at it, a flicker of surprise crossing my eyes. This beast actually knew what was good for it. The mutant bear laid flat on the ground, its eyes filled with absolute reverence. I sized it up. The brute was absolutely massive, weighing at least 1,000 pounds. Its whole body was bulging with muscle. Looked like the research institute pumped it full of serums. I let out a low growl, and the black bear immediately stood up, falling in line right behind me. Well, since it was willing to submit, I might as well keep it around. It could be useful later on. I turned to face the depths of the laboratory. There were still plenty of rooms down there. Who knows what they were hiding? With the black bear in tow, I went on a rampage, smashing through door after door. Finally, I reached a room at the very end of the facility. The door read, Core Energy Vault, authorized personnel only. I kicked the door wide open. The sight inside completely blew me away. The entire room was packed with massive incubator tanks, and floating inside each one were energy crystals of every color. These crystals were radiating intense surges of energy. God knows how many times stronger than the serums I drank earlier. Then, the system chimed in. Ding, high purity energy source detected. It is highly recommended that the host consumes it immediately. Upon consumption, you will break through your current physical limits and evolve to a higher tier. Without a second thought, I charged forward, using my horns to smash the first tank into pieces. A blue energy crystal tumbled out, and I swallowed it whole in one massive gulp. The crystal melted the second it hit my tongue, and a terrifying surge of energy exploded inside my body. Ding, consumed high purity energy crystal. Gained 2,000 high energy points. Strength increased by 80 points. Vitality increased by 100 points. Agility increased by 60 points. I could feel every single cell in my body screaming in absolute euphoria. This felt better than anything I had ever tasted. I went absolutely wild, smashing the rest of the tanks. Red ones, green ones, purple ones, gold ones. I swallowed every single one of them down into my gut. The system notifications went crazy. Current weight, 3,500 pounds. Strength, 580. Vitality, 550. Agility, 320. Host energy overload detected. Initiating secondary body evolution. My heavy armor began to crack and splinter, as a brand new set of armor violently grew out from the fissures. The color was much darker, and the plating felt infinitely tougher. The bone spikes along my spine were growing too, stretching from 2 feet all the way to 3 feet long. Every single one of them gleamed with a sinister, dark red aura. And my horns, they were even more insane. They shot up to 5 feet long, as thick as a grown man's thigh. The tips were terrifyingly sharp. But right at that moment, the laboratory's alarms started blaring at full blast. Dr. Su's voice echoed through the intercom system. With hysterical madness, he activated the self-destruct sequence. Since he couldn't capture me, he was ready to take me down with him. As soon as he said that, the whole lab began to shake. Red lights flashed wildly on the walls. The countdown had started. In 10 minutes, this place would be blown to rubble. My heart sank. I had to get out of here, fast. I turned and dashed out, with the black bear right on my heels. But just as I reached the lab doors, I saw the scar-faced captain leading the rest of the security guards blocking the way. They were armed with heavy machine guns, and a few even had flamethrowers. The captain's face was pale with rage, his eyes full of pure determination. Dr. Sue said, "Even if we die, we're taking you down with us. You're going to rot in here." The moment he finished speaking, they all opened fire at once. A storm of bullets rained down on us, while the flamethrowers blasted out scorching heat. I let out a furious roar and unleashed my fear roar ability. But this time, the guards were clearly prepared. They were wearing custom earplugs, completely blunting the effect of my roar. I had no choice but to push through, charging head-on into the bullets and flames. The bullets slammed against my armor. While they couldn't pierce my defenses, the sheer force of the impact still slowed me down. The flames seared my skin, making it uncomfortably hot. It wasn't fatal, but it hurt like hell. I triggered my devastating charge, plowing into the crowd like a heavy tank. Several guards were sent flying, slamming hard against the walls. I didn't care if they survived. But the scar-faced captain didn't even flinch. He dropped his machine gun and pulled out a remote. Go to hell. He slammed the button, and over a dozen massive iron cages dropped from the ceiling, trapping me inside. The moment the cages sparked with electricity, an intense shock surged through my entire body. But this time, my constitution had reached 550 points. This pathetic voltage couldn't hurt me at all. I let out a furious roar and flexed my muscles, tearing the iron cage apart with brute strength. When the captain saw that, a look of utter despair flashed in his eyes. You monster, you're a complete monster. I charged right up to him and knocked the remote out of his hand with a single strike of my hoof. But I didn't end him. Instead, I bolted straight for the exit. The countdown was at 5 minutes. We had to get out of there. The black bear and I smashed out of the lab, sprinting madly down the hallway. But the facility was built like a maze, packed with branching paths and dead ends. I crashed through door after door until I finally spotted the elevator to the surface. But the power to the elevator was cut. We had to take the stairs. I burst into the stairwell, scrambling up the steps on all fours. The black bear stayed right behind me, panting heavily. 3 minutes left on the clock. I pushed myself to run even faster. At last, we reached the ground floor. But the exit was sealed shut by a massive titanium door. Without a second thought, I unleashed another devastating charge. With a deafening boom, I smashed a huge hole right through the titanium door and scrambled my way out. I realized the outside was a vast wilderness, surrounded completely by woods. With only 1 minute left on the countdown, I ran away as fast as I could. The black bear sprinted right behind me. 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. Boom, an earth-shattering explosion went off. The entire research facility was reduced to rubble in the blast, and the shockwave swept out like a massive tsunami. I was blown away, crashing heavily into the ground. The black bear was blown away too, slamming hard against a massive tree. It passed out instantly. The facility behind us had already turned into a raging sea of fire. Thick smoke billowed into the air, making it impossible to see anything. Dr. Sue, Captain Scarface, and all those security guards. They must have all perished in the explosion. I panted heavily. My entire body was covered in wounds, but my eyes flickered with pure excitement. I survived, and I've become even stronger. The system's prompt rang out. Ding. Successfully escaped the research facility. Achievement unlocked. Ultimate survival. Current weight, 3,500 pounds. Strength, 580. Vitality, 550. Agility, 320. You have reached the peak state of the abyssal demon bull. It is recommended that the host seeks out stronger opponents to break through your limits. I gazed at the endless mountain range in the distance, a hint of deep longing flashing in my eyes. Human weapons can't even scratch me anymore. Carrying the unconscious black bear, I limped my way deep into the dense forest. The wounds on my body were still bleeding, but the system was already helping me heal rapidly. After walking for about half an hour, the black bear finally woke up. He looked at me, his eyes filled with absolute gratitude. He clearly knew that I was the one who saved him. I let out a low rumble, signaling him to follow along, and then I kept moving forward. Suddenly, the system alert chimed in again. Ding. Detected that 3 kilometers ahead. There is a large gathering of high-energy creatures. It is recommended that the host proceed to hunt them down. My eyes lit up, and I immediately picked up my pace. The further I went, the stronger the thick stench of blood became in the air. Finally, I stepped into a wide clearing, and the sight before me left me completely shocked. Animal corpses were scattered absolutely everywhere. Deer, wild boars, wolves. There were even a few bears. And right in the center of the pile of carcasses stood 7 or 8 massive, mutated creatures. The leader of the pack was a monstrous, mutated tiger. It was at least 3 times the size of a normal tiger, packed with bulging, knotted muscles. Its eyes glowed with an eerie green light. Flanking its sides were 2 mutated leopards, a mutated wild boar, and several mutated wolves. These bastards were clearly hunting as a pack. They were monopolizing this area for their hunts. The moment the mutated tiger spotted me, a flash of pure caution crossed its eyes. It let out a low, menacing growl. Immediately, the other mutated creatures fanned out, moving in to surround me. I just swished my tail, completely fearless. These freaks might be tough, but against me, they didn't stand a chance. The mutated tiger made the first move, charging at a terrifying speed. It lunged for my throat like a bolt of lightning. I quickly sidestepped to dodge it, and viciously thrust my horns straight toward its belly. The mutated tiger twisted midair, barely dodging the fatal blow, but my horns still slashed a nasty gash across its ribs. It landed and immediately backed off, a hint of caution flashing in its eyes. 2 mutated leopards took the chance to pounce from the flank, their razor-sharp claws aiming right for my eyes. I spun around violently, meeting them with the jagged bone spikes on my back. One leopard couldn't react in time and got impaled straight through the body. It died on the spot. The other leopard was so terrified it instantly jumped back, not daring to get any closer. Suddenly, a mutated wild boar charged at me from behind, viciously thrusting its tusks at my hind legs. I reared up my hind hooves and kicked it hard right in the head. With a heavy, sickening thud, the boar's skull shattered from the impact, and it collapsed, completely dead. In just a few short seconds, I had absolutely wrecked 2 mutated creatures. Seeing this, the remaining mutated wolves trembled in sheer terror, totally too scared to even step forward. But a flash of fury ignited in the mutated tiger's eyes. It roared up at the sky, and its body actually started to swell. This bastard could go into a frenzy, too. Enraged, the mutated tiger grew a whole size larger, its strength and speed skyrocketing. It lunged at me once again. This time, it was so damn fast I could barely see it. Its razor claws raked across my armor, leaving 3 deep gashes. It almost tore right through my defense. Wincing from the pain, I stumbled back a few steps, my eyes turning dead serious. This beast actually had some real power. But the mutated tiger wasn't letting up, attacking like an absolute maniac. Its claws and fangs rained down on me like a vicious storm. Even though my armor was tough, it just couldn't hold out against this relentless onslaught. Cracks started to form. I couldn't drag this out any longer. I had to end this fast. I furiously triggered my bloodlust frenzy. My eyes turned blood red, and my strength exploded to 800 points. Letting out a furious roar, I unleashed my devastating charge. The mutated tiger tried to dodge, only to realize I was way faster than it now. With a deafening boom, I slammed right into its body. The mutated tiger was sent flying, crashing violently into a massive tree. The trunk completely snapped in half. I took the chance to charge right in, plunging my horns deep into its chest. The mutated tiger let out a blood-curdling scream, struggling frantically, but it just couldn't break free from my horns. I gave it a brutal toss. The mutated tiger twitched a few times and then went completely dead silent. Seeing the tiger dead, the remaining mutated wolves were so terrified they turned tail and bolted. But like hell I was gonna let them escape. I activated sprint, catching up to them in an instant. In just a few breaths, I slaughtered every single one of those mutated wolves. I stood there panting heavily amidst the pile of corpses, covered in blood. The black bear walked over, its eyes filled with total awe. I began to devour the bodies of these mutated creatures. As the warm flesh entered my mouth, that familiar, burning sensation surged through my body once again. Ding. Devour complete. Current weight, 4,200 pounds. Strength, 650. Vitality, 600. Agility, 380. Unable to continue evolving, it is recommended that the host seek out and devour legendary tier creatures. To break through your racial limits. Legendary tier creatures? What the hell were those? The system didn't answer. It just projected an image right into my mind. It was a glimpse of the deeper wilderness. Giant ancient trees and thick fog were everywhere. And deep within the mist, I could faintly make out a few massive figures, giving off an absolutely terrifying presence. I looked at the scene, and a flash of excitement crossed my eyes. It looked like the real challenge was just beginning. Suddenly, the roar of helicopters echoed from the distance. I looked up, and saw 3 armed helicopters flying straight toward us. They had the research lab's logo on their sides. So, Dr. Su wasn't dead after all. And he even called for backup. The loudspeaker on the chopper crackled to life, blasting Dr. Su's hysterical voice. "You filthy beast. You destroyed my lab. You killed my people. Today, I'm going to make you pay." As soon as he finished, the helicopter's machine guns opened fire. Dense hail of bullets rained down, kicking up thick clouds of dust all over the ground. I immediately ducked behind a massive tree, and the black bear scrambled into hiding right behind me. But their firepower was just too intense. The tree was quickly shredded, riddled with holes. I had to find a way to fight back, or they'd slowly grind us down to death. Just then, I spotted a giant boulder not too far away. I dashed out of cover, charging straight toward the rock through the hail of bullets. The bullets slammed against my armor. They couldn't break through my defense. But the sheer force of the impact still slowed me down. I gritted my teeth and pushed through, finally reaching the boulder. I shoved my horns underneath it and gave a massive heave. I lifted the whole rock up. It had to weigh several tons. I locked onto the nearest helicopter, and with every ounce of my strength, I hurled the rock into the air. The giant boulder shot toward the chopper like a cannonball, moving at a terrifying speed. The pilot didn't even have time to react before the boulder smashed violently into the chassis. Boom! With a deafening blast, the helicopter exploded in midair. It turned into a massive fireball, sending burning wreckage crashing to the ground. Terrified, the other two choppers immediately pulled up, too scared to get any closer. Dr. Su's voice blasted from the speaker again, this time filled with panic and sheer rage. Blow him to pieces with the missiles. The moment he screamed that, both choppers launched their payloads. 4 missiles shrieked through the air, trailing long tails of fire. They were locked right onto my position. I instantly triggered my burst of speed, diving out of the way as fast as I could. Boom, 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 boom. 4 massive explosions ripped through the area, and a sea of flames swallowed where I was just standing. Everything within dozens of meters was blown to rubble. I crouched behind a huge rock, covered in dirt and ash, but completely unhurt. But the choppers weren't letting up. 4 more missiles came screaming toward us. I gritted my teeth. We couldn't just keep taking hits like this. I had to find a way to bring them down. I glanced over at the black bear, and a crazy idea flashed through my mind. I let out a low growl, signaling for him to climb onto my back. The bear had no idea what I was planning, but he did it anyway. With the bear on my back, I burst out from our cover, charging straight for the nearest giant tree. The choppers immediately turned their machine guns on us, sparks flying everywhere as bullets sparked off my body. I powered through the gunfire, reached the base of the tree, and violently unleashed my hell stomp. The massive roots began to break loose, and I slammed my horns right into the trunk. With a sudden burst of strength, the tree roots snapped. The massive tree started to topple, and it was falling right toward one of the helicopters. The pilot realized something was wrong and desperately tried to dodge it. But it was too late. The huge tree crashed heavily into the chopper. Branches jammed the propeller, and the helicopter spun out of control, plummeting to the ground. Boom! The chopper smashed into the earth and exploded. Flames shot up into the sky. Dr. Su was clearly terrified. His voice came through the loudspeaker, practically sobbing. Retreat. Fall back. We can't kill this monster. The last helicopter immediately banked hard, trying to escape. But there was no way I was letting it get away. Carrying the black bear on my back, I charged toward another huge tree. Using the same trick, I rammed the tree down again. The tree crashed toward the helicopter, but this time, the chopper reacted faster and managed to dodge it. My heart sank. Was it really going to get away? Right at that moment, the black bear suddenly leapt off my back. Catching a branch in midair, it swung itself forward with incredible momentum, and actually landed right on the chopper's landing gear. The bear weighed well over 1,000 pounds. The helicopter instantly lost its balance and started to sway wildly. The pilot fought frantically to steady it, but the bear had already climbed outside the cockpit. It smashed its heavy paws against the glass, shattering the window. The bear slapped the pilot right across the face. The pilot screamed, and his hands slipped off the controls. The chopper completely lost control. With a deafening boom, it crashed into the ground, and another fiery explosion lit up the sky. The bear had jumped off right before the crash. Although it took a pretty nasty tumble, it wasn't seriously hurt. I walked over and gave it an approving nudge with my trunk, as a way to say good job. This beast might not be the strongest, but it sure has a good head on its shoulders. Ding! Armed helicopter destroyed. Gained 500 high energy points. Successfully repelled armed human pursuit. Achievement unlocked. Public enemy of humanity. I looked at the wreckage of the 3 helicopters, with a cold gleam in my eyes. Human weapons might be powerful, but in the face of absolute strength, they were nothing. Just then, the roar of an engine echoed from the distance. I looked up. I saw a massive armored vehicle rolling toward us. Mounted on its roof was a gigantic autocannon. The pitch-black barrel aimed right at me. The vehicle's door opened, and Captain Scarface stepped out. He was wrapped in bandages from head to toe, clearly severely injured from the earlier explosion, but he had somehow survived. He glared at me, his eyes burning with pure hatred. "You monster! You killed so many of my brothers. Today I will have my revenge." As he spoke, he pressed a remote control. The autocannon on the armored car instantly opened fire. Boom boom boom. The shells rained down like a storm. Every single shot packed devastating power. I dodged frantically, but the blast radius was just too wide. There was nowhere to hide. A shell exploded right next to me, and the massive shockwave sent me flying through the air. I crashed heavily into the ground, and several huge cracks appeared on my armor. The firepower of this armored vehicle was even fiercer than a chopper. I struggled to my feet. A flash of ruthless determination crossed my eyes. Since I couldn't dodge it, then I'd take it head on. I triggered my bloodthirsty rampage. My eyes turned blood red, and my strength skyrocketed to 900 points. I let out a furious roar and unleashed my devastating charge. I barreled straight toward the armored vehicle. The scar-faced captain saw me charging in. His face fell, and he instantly ordered to max out the firepower. The autocannons fired wildly, raining shells down on me like a torrential storm. I pushed forward through the barrage, the cracks on my armor multiplying by the second. Blood gushed from the fissures, but I didn't stop. Instead, I charged even faster. 100 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters, the scar-faced captain finally panicked. He turned around, desperately trying to escape into the vehicle. But it was already too late. I slammed brutally into the armored vehicle. The terrifying impact sent the massive machine flying, flipping several times in midair. It crashed heavily into the ground, its chassis completely crushed and mangled. The scar-faced captain was thrown out of the wreckage, slamming hard against the dirt. Covered in blood, I slowly walked up to him. I towered over him, glaring down. He stared back at me, his eyes filled with absolute terror and despair. "Monster, you're a freaking monster." I raised my massive front hoof and stomped ruthlessly on the armored vehicle. Crunch, crack, the reinforced steel was crushed to pieces under my weight. The ammo inside began to cook off. With a deafening boom, the vehicle was completely blown into scrap metal. The shockwave sent the scar-faced captain flying, leaving him dead or alive, who knows. I stood amidst the flaming ruins, panting heavily. I was covered in wounds, but my eyes flickered with a thrilling excitement. Human weaponry couldn't stop me anymore. A system notification chimed in. Ding. Successfully destroyed heavy armored vehicle. Gained 800 high energy points. Current weight, 4,500 pounds. Strength, 700. Constitution, 650. Agility, 400. The host has become the strongest entity in this region. It is advised to venture deeper into the wilderness in search of legendary creatures. That place was shrouded in thick mist, and I could faintly sense an overwhelming, terrifying pressure. It was time to check it out. I led the black bear away from the battlefield, heading straight into the depths of the wild. Thanks to the system, my wounds were healing rapidly, and the cracks on my armor were sealing up. We walked for about 3 hours, the surroundings growing increasingly desolate and the trees thinning out. Suddenly, I stopped in my tracks. Up ahead was a very familiar place. It was the brawny man's cattle farm from back then. I hesitated for a second, but decided to go take a look. The farm was completely run down, overgrown with weeds everywhere. The pens were completely empty. I walked up to the very pen that used to hold me. The dry hay was still there, though it had already gone moldy. Just then, I heard a little girl's voice echoing from a distance. "Daddy, look, there's a giant cow over there." I turned around, and saw the brawny man holding Duo's hand, standing right at the entrance of the farm. When the big guy saw me, he froze completely. His face instantly drained of color. He recognized me, but Duo wasn't scared at all. Instead, she ran over excitedly. "Wow, what a huge cow. It's way bigger than Xiaohei." The big man was scared out of his wits. He immediately rushed over and yanked Duo back. Duo, don't go over there. That's no ordinary cow. That's. He couldn't even finish his sentence, because he saw me staring right at them. I slowly walked toward them. The big man collapsed to the ground in terror, shielding Duo behind him. Please spare my daughter. If you want to kill someone, kill me." His voice was shaking, and his eyes were filled with absolute dread. I walked right up to them and lowered my head to look at Duo. The little girl stared at me with big, wide eyes. There was no fear in them at all. Instead, she just looked curious. "Mr. Cow, are you Xiaohei? How did you get so incredibly big?" She reached out her tiny hand, wanting to touch my nose. The big man was terrified and instantly grabbed her hand, desperately afraid that I would hurt her. I just looked at Duo. The memory flashed in my mind, of her crying and begging the big man not to kill me. Even though he still ended up selling me, at least Duo was genuinely kind to me. I gently nudged Duo's hand with my nose, then turned around and walked away. The big man froze. He completely didn't expect me to let them go. "Xiaohei, is that really you?" he asked, his voice shaking. I didn't look back. I just took the black bear and kept walking forward. Let the past be the past. I'm no longer that same helpless cow, waiting to be slaughtered. After leaving the cattle farm, I picked up my pace. The system notification chimed. Ding. Detected a massive energy fluctuation 10 kilometers ahead. Suspected legendary class creature. My eyes lit up, and I immediately sprinted in that direction. The further I went, the heavier and more suffocating the air became. The black bear started trembling violently, clearly sensing the extreme danger. I told him to stay put and wait for me, then I continued forward completely alone. Finally, I arrived at a wide, open clearing. It was completely barren, without a single blade of grass. The ground was covered in scorched black marks, and the thick stench of sulfur filled the air. And right in the center of the clearing, rested an absolutely gigantic creature. It was a horrifyingly massive python, easily at least 30 meters long. It was as thick as a water barrel, its entire body covered in pitch-black scales. Its head was the size of a small car. Its eyes were closed, as if it were in a deep slumber. The system chimed again. Ding. Detected legendary class creature, abyssal python. Combat power level assessed as extremely dangerous. Advising the host to proceed with extreme caution. This creature possesses catastrophic power. I stared at the giant python, my heart pounding faster and faster. The sheer pressure radiating from this beast was stronger than any other creature I had ever faced. But I didn't back down. Instead, a fierce spark of excitement flashed in my eyes. Only by devouring this monster could I break through my absolute limits and evolve to a higher tier. I took a deep, steadying breath and slowly crept toward the python. However, I had barely taken a few steps when the giant python suddenly snapped its eyes open. A terrifying pair of glowing, blood-red eyes. Filled with a cold, murderous intent, it stared right at me. Letting out a low, menacing hiss, in the very next second, it suddenly reared its massive head. It opened its bloodthirsty jaws and lunged right at me. I immediately dodged out of the way. The giant python's fangs slammed into the ground, leaving behind 2 deep craters. I seized the chance and charged forward, thrusting my horns straight into its body. But as my horns struck its scales, they only left a shallow scratch. This beast's defense is even stronger than my armor. Suddenly, the python's tail whipped toward me. Like a massive iron whip, it lashed ruthlessly against my body. I was sent flying through the air, crashing heavily onto the ground. Several cracks formed on my armor. What terrifying strength! I struggled to my feet, and triggered my bloodthirsty rampage. My eyes turned blood red, and my strength surged wildly to 1,000 points. Letting out a furious roar, I charged at the giant python once again. This time, my speed was faster, and my power was far greater. I unleashed devastating charge, slamming brutally into the python's body. The impact knocked the massive beast off balance, and several cracks appeared on its scales. But it immediately fought back, opening its jaws to spew a stream of black venom. As the venom hit the ground, it instantly dissolved the earth, leaving gaping craters everywhere. I desperately dodged out of the way, but I still got splashed by some of it. The venom landed on my armor, letting out a sickening, sizzling sound. My armor began to melt away, and a sharp, stinging pain pierced my skin. The power of this venom is absolutely terrifying. The beast seized the chance and coiled around my body. The immense crushing force began to tighten. I could feel my bones groaning and cracking. It was getting harder and harder to breathe. No, if this keeps up, I'm going to be crushed to death. I fought with everything I had, driving the bone spikes on my back straight into the beast's body. The spikes pierced right through its scales, digging deep into the giant python's flesh. Shrieking in pain, the python loosened its grip just enough, and I seized the chance to break free. I was gasping for air, covered in wounds from head to toe. My armor was riddled with cracks and acid burns, but I didn't back down. Instead, the fighting spirit in my eyes burned even brighter. I unleashed Hell's Stomp. I slammed my foot into the ground, setting off a massive, deafening boom. The earth shook violently, throwing the giant python completely off balance. I lunged forward, driving my horns viciously straight into the python's vital spot. This time, my horns finally shattered its scales, plunging deep into the beast's body. The giant python let out a blood-curdling shriek, thrashing around wildly. Its tail slammed mercilessly into me, and I was thrown violently through the air. I crashed right into a massive boulder, shattering the stone to pieces. I collapsed onto the ground, feeling like every bone in my body had just been pulverized. But I gritted my teeth, dragged myself up, and charged at the giant python once more. This battle only ends when one of us is dead. The python and I tore into each other in a frantic, bloody clash across the open wasteland. Every collision made the earth tremble, because I had severely wounded its vital spot. Its movements had clearly slowed down, but its counterattacks were just as savage as ever. It spewed another blast of venom, and I desperately threw myself out of the way. But it still caught my hind leg, burning a massive hole straight through my armor. A blinding surge of pain washed over me, and my legs almost gave out. But I gritted my teeth and charged right at the giant python. I thrust my horns viciously at its eyes. The python let out a blood-curdling shriek, and whipped its head wildly. My horns missed their mark, only tearing into its eyelid. Enraged, it snapped its massive, bloody jaws right at me. There was no time to dodge. I could only brace myself and meet it with the bone spikes on my back. The spikes pierced right through its jaw. Howling in pain, it let go. I seized the chance and unleashed my devastating charge, slamming heavily into its skull. Crack! The giant python's skull fractured. Its massive body began to convulse violently, but I didn't give it a single second to breathe. I lunged forward again, driving my horns straight for its throat. This time, they sank deep. Blood gushed out like a fountain. The python let out one last, dying hiss. Its body twitched a few more times, and finally lay still. Ding! You have slain the legendary creature, the abyssal python. Gained 5,000 high energy points. Body weight has broken through 5,000 pounds. Agility has broken through 800 points. I collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. My entire body was battered and bruised. I could barely even stand. But the system's chime forced me to push through the pain and drag myself up. I began devouring the python's corpse. The moment its flesh hit my mouth, an unprecedented surge of energy exploded inside me. I felt like every single cell in my body was cheering. They were frantically absorbing this power. Ding. Devouring in progress. 10%. Ding. 30%. 50%. 637%. Ding. Assimilation. 30%. 50%. 32%. My old armor began to peel off, and brand new plating erupted from beneath my skin. It was a much darker color and insanely tough. It gleamed with a metallic shine. The bone spikes on my back were growing, too. They shot up from 3 feet to 5 feet long, each one radiating a menacing, dark gold aura. And my horns? They were completely out of control, growing straight to 7 feet. They were as thick as tree trunks, and the tips were terrifyingly sharp. Like they could pierce through the very heavens. My body mass was exploding, too, skyrocketing from 5,000 to 6,000 pounds. My muscles bulge, packed with absolute, explosive power. Ding. Devouring complete. Current weight, 6,000 pounds. Strength, 1,000. Vitality, 900. Agility, 500. Evolution complete. Current form, Wilderness Overlord. Ultimate skill unlocked. Devastating stomp. Overlord aura, and immortal physique. I stood up, feeling raw power coursing through my veins. I felt like I could tear the world apart. I threw my head back and let out a deafening roar. The sound ripped through the wilderness like a clap of thunder. Every animal for dozens of miles heard my roar, dropping to the ground and trembling in absolute terror. The black bear came running from a distance. But the moment it saw my new form, its eyes widened in pure awe and fear. It flattened itself against the dirt, not even daring to look up at me. I gave a low, rumbling growl, gesturing for it to rise. Only then did the bear stagger to its feet, shaking like a leaf. It trailed quietly behind me. I turned my gaze toward the distant mountain range. That was the deepest part of the wilderness, the most dangerous place in all the legends. But as I am now, I am no longer afraid of any challenge. Leading the black bear, I walked deeper into the wilderness step by step. Wherever I went, all the beasts retreated. Not a single creature dared to come near me. I climbed to the highest peak in the wilderness and stood at the very edge of the cliff. Looking down at the land below, the distant cattle farm was completely out of sight. That place used to be my cage, but now, this entire wilderness is my territory. I threw my head back and let out another massive roar, the sound shaking the very mountains and forests. Deep within the woods, the roars of countless wild beasts echoed back. It was as if they were answering my call. Packs of wolves, sleuths of bears, streaks of tigers, even the mutated creatures, they were all bowing down toward the mountain peak. They were submitting to the new king of this wilderness. Looking at the thousands of beasts below me, a flicker of satisfaction crossed my eyes. From a helpless farm cow waiting to be slaughtered, to the absolute ruler of the wilderness. It took me less than half a year. The shackles of humanity, I had completely shattered them. Human weapons were nothing but mere toys to me now. Starting today, this wilderness belongs to me. The system notification chimed one last time. Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the ultimate evolution and becoming the overlord of the wilderness. A new journey is about to begin. A much vaster world awaits your exploration. I gazed into the distance. Out there were taller mountains, deeper forests, and even stronger opponents. I knew this was only the beginning. I let out one final, deafening roar. My voice echoed across the entire wilderness, and all the beasts roared in unison. The very mountains and forests shook. From this day forward, I am the supreme beast king of this land. No humans, no chains, no restraints, only the endless wilderness and the unending path of evolution. I turned to look even further away. The area was shrouded in thick mist, where I could faintly make out an even more expansive world. Perhaps even stronger beings were waiting for me there. But I wasn't afraid, because I am the overlord of the wilderness. I am the demon bull that devours all. My journey has only just begun. The black bear followed closely behind me. Together, we walked deeper into the wilderness, heading toward the great unknown. Behind us, the roars of thousands of beasts echoed endlessly, as if they were seeing off their king.